The sky was still dark when Amara Johnson stepped onto the cracked concrete of a shoddy bus park, her tray wobbling slightly on her left hand, steam rising from rows of hot teacups, their saucers clinking with every step. The air was thick with exhaust fumes, roasted plantain smoke, and the loud hollers of bus conductors trying to fill their seats before rush hour. She weaved through the crowd like she'd done 100 times before, head down, careful not to make eye contact. Her blue flip-flops slapped the ground as she moved quickly, dodging a reckless Danfo, reversing without warning. "Tea! Hot tea! Bread and a cara!" she called softly, her voice barely rising above the chaos. Then they spotted her, a group of teenage boys, idling near a peeling bus with worn-out tires, turned and grinned when they saw her. Ah, see Madam Parliament," one shouted, licking fried yam grease off his fingers. "Bring us tea before you go and pass new bills for Nigeria." Laughter exploded from the group. Another boy mimicked her walk, swinging his hips with exaggerated grace, balancing an imaginary tray. "Order! Order in the house!" he cried. "Motion to increase price of tea to 10 million naira." Amara said nothing. Her grip tightened around the tray. She had learned. Words wasted here only invited more cruelty. One of them walked closer, towering over her. "You too, dey form serious. Na tea, you dey sell. Who you want impress?" Before she could shift away, he knocked the edge of the tray. The plastic cups clattered onto the ground, tea spilling like warm tears across the dusty pavement. There was a pause. A silence brief but cruel. A few of the boys chuckled again. Maybe when she reached Parliament, dem go give her better tray. Amara knelt slowly, gathering the broken pieces, her eyes stinging, not from the tea steam, not from shame, but from something deeper. A woman in her late 40s, seated nearby with a crate of boiled eggs, leaned toward her. Her voice was soft but firm. "Why don't you just go to school, child?" Amara looked up, face sweaty, hands trembling, lips pressed tightly together. Then she said it, so quietly the woman had to lean in again. "So I can make them listen someday." The woman blinked. A moment of silence passed between them. Amara stood, brushing the dirt off her skirt, lifted her now half-empty tray, and walked away, spine straight, steps steady, freeze frame, voiceover. That day, they saw a tea seller. Years later, they would rise for a parliamentarian. 5 years earlier, the Johnson household was already unraveling. Their 2-room apartment in Ajagunla was always dim, even at noon. The paint had long peeled from the walls, and the single ceiling fan spun slowly, complaining with each turn. The air was always heavy, like it carried everything they couldn't say. Philip Johnson used to wear crisp shirts and carry a briefcase to his job at the Ministry of Works. But when the letters came, retrenchment due to restructuring, he stopped shaving. Weeks passed. He barely left the house. He would sit on the wooden chair by the window, staring out like he expected someone to come apologize. Amara remembered the change, the silence, the resentment that grew in his eyes, like moss. Her mother, Aoife, kept moving. She doubled her efforts in the market, standing all day behind stacks of vegetables, shouting for customers with a forced smile and swollen feet. Tope and Lulu, still in primary school, didn't fully grasp the tension. They noticed the fewer meals, the worn uniforms, but not the weight behind them. Amara did. She was in JSS 3 then, smart, curious, always top of her class. Her teacher, Mrs. Grace Ojo, called her a natural leader. "You think like a judge," she'd say, handing back an essay filled with red ticks and a wide A. "Don't let this place bury your voice." But when the rent became a looming threat and her mother started hiding tears behind the onions she chopped, Amara made a choice. She left school, quietly. She told Mrs. Ojo after class. The older woman held her hand so tightly, Amara thought her bones would crack. "There are scholarships. Let's talk to the principal." "It's not just school fees, Ma," Amara whispered. "They need to eat." From the next morning, she was up before dawn, boiling water over a charcoal stove outside their compound. She borrowed a plastic tray from a neighbor and started selling tea and bread at the motor park. The first week she cried every night, but then something shifted. She began to observe the chaos, the injustice, the small fights over N50, change that turned violent. She listened to tired workers rant about failed politicians, watched uniformed officials extort drivers like it was normal. She served tea to men in suits who called her small girl without looking her in the eye. In the evenings, when most girls her age were watching soap operas or fetching water, Amara snuck into the local library reading hall. The place was old, barely lit, its wooden tables scratched with names and dreams of kids who never made it. But there, she found her peace. Uncle Bayo, the night guard with tired eyes and missing teeth, started letting her in. "You again?" he'd grumble playfully. "You want to carry all the books, Abby?" She'd smile, pulling out a notebook, her pen already twitching. He started bringing her water, sometimes a banana, never asked questions, just nodded when she wrote for hours. She devoured old government textbooks, law journals from the early 2000s, and copies of the Nigerian constitution missing a few pages. She started keeping a journal. First entry: "I want to become a lawmaker, not just to make laws, but to rewrite the ones that failed us. That failed my father, my mother, me." Meanwhile, her best friend Chisholm was drowning in her own storm. Bright and sassy, Chisholm had dreams of becoming a nurse. But when she got pregnant by a mechanic who promised forever and gave nothing, those dreams vanished. One day, she simply stopped coming to the reading hall. Amara found her months later selling recharge cards outside a pharmacy, the baby tied to her back. The cycle was tightening around all of them, but Amara refused to stop. Her voice got louder. She started speaking up at the bus park when drivers cheated passengers, argued when police harassed hawkers. People started noticing. "Who's she be?" they would scoff. "Small tea seller with big mouth." The nickname stuck. "Tea girl with big mouth." They laughed, but she kept writing, kept reading, kept dreaming, because every time someone mocked her, she whispered to herself, "One day I'll have to listen." The fire started just before dawn. Amara had just returned from her usual tea round, her hands smelling faintly of condensed milk and kerosene. She was halfway through folding laundry when she heard the screams. A rising chorus of panic and smoke-choked shouts filtered in through the narrow window. She ran barefoot. By the time she reached the market, it was already chaos. Flames licked the sky, orange and angry. Black smoke curled above rusted zinc roofs like a warning. Women screamed, tossing buckets of water that hissed into steam. Others cried as years of their lives burned. Yams, tomatoes, onions, all turning to ash. Her mother, Ife, stood in front of what used to be her stall, frozen, charred wood and melted plastic, all that remained. No insurance, no fire service, no help. Someone muttered nearby, "Only God." Amara stood next to her mother, breathing hard, heart hammering. Eve was silent, but her hands trembled. Amara had never seen her like that, completely still, like something inside had finally cracked. In the days that followed, promises floated like ashes. The local government chairman visited the ruins wearing a bright agbada and sunglasses that reflected the destruction he barely looked at. Cameras followed him as he offered staged condolences and vowed swift support. "We will rebuild together," he said into microphones. "Our traders are the heart of this community." But days passed, then weeks. Nothing came, no funds, no rebuilding, no hope. One Saturday, during a community town hall organized for dialogue, the chairman appeared again, flanked by aides and cronies. Plastic chairs filled the dusty clearing. Traders, elders and youths sat quietly, used to the rhythm of empty words. But not Amara. She stood up from the back row, voice clear. Her hair was tied in a simple scarf, her clothes clean but worn. "Sir, where is the support you promised?" she asked. Murmurs rose. He adjusted his sunglasses. "Young lady, this is not the time." "No," she interrupted. "You always appear during campaigns with rice and wrappers, but you vanish when we bleed." The murmurs turned into gasps. Phones came out. Someone started recording. "You smile on posters," she continued, her voice shaking but unwavering. "But we're tired of leaders who vanish when we need them. My mother's stall fed us. Now it's gone. And so is your promise." The chairman's face twitched, caught off guard. An aide reached for the mic, but the moment had already landed. Later that evening, the video hit Facebook. Within hours, it was everywhere. The clip was raw, emotional, and unfiltered. People shared it with captions like, "This girl said the truth," and "Give her a microphone in Abuja." One of those shares reached Ngozi Mba, a retired civil rights lawyer in Enugu. Ngozi had spent her life fighting for displaced communities and underserved women. Her arthritis had slowed her steps, but not her mind. When she saw Amara's fire, her steady tone, her unflinching eyes, she saw something familiar. The next morning, Amara received a call. "This is Mrs. Ngozi Mba," the voice said. "You don't know me, but I know you. I saw your clip. You have courage, and you have a voice this country needs." Amara didn't speak. She wasn't sure if it was real. "If you're serious," Ngozi continued, "I will sponsor your return to school, but only if you're ready to fight, not with anger, but with education." Amara swallowed hard. Her hands trembled as she whispered, "I'm ready, Ma." That same week, she enrolled in a local night school. She sold tea during the day, her tray slightly lighter now, her steps more purposeful. In the evenings, she sat under flickering classroom bulbs with students twice her age, soaking up every word like dry earth meeting rain. She studied law textbooks borrowed from the library, some pages still marked with her notes from years ago. The mocking whispers didn't stop. T-girl 1 become lawyer now. She go Abuja with a car of crumbs for hair. But this time, she didn't flinch. Every night before bed, she wrote in her journal, "This time, I'm not just dreaming, I'm building, brick by brick." By the time Amara turned 24, the tea tray was gone, but the scars it left still shaped her. Her mornings now began with lectures at the university and evenings filled with legal case studies, community outreach, and library runs that lasted till midnight. She was in her final year of studying political science and law at a local state university, carrying a GPA most students only dreamed of. Her name often showed up on department notice boards as best in class. Professors admired her. Some feared her questions. But at home, things were different. Her father, Philip, had grown colder, more withdrawn with every milestone Amara achieved. What started as silent disapproval turned into sharp jabs. "You think you're better than everyone now because of book," he'd sneer. "Even your mates are married. You're here chasing shadows." It stung, but Amara held her tongue until the night he crossed the line. She had just returned from the university library, worn and hungry, clutching her final year project draft, her thesis, "Governance Gaps and Poverty Perpetuation in Nigeria, a Case for Institutional Reform." Philip was already waiting in the living room, his eyes heavy with drink. "What's this rubbish?" he growled, snatching the file from her hands. "Daddy, please." Before she could finish, he tore it in two. "You will not disgrace me with this madness," he bellowed. "You were born into a poor man's house, and poor you shall remain. Tea girls don't enter Parliament. You hear me?" She stood frozen, chest heaving. Her younger siblings peeked from the hallway, silent, afraid. That night, she packed her bag. Ngozi helped her find a small room behind a compound near the university, a single bulb overhead, a shared bathroom, but peace. The silence there wasn't cold or bitter. It was hers. Amara rewrote her thesis from scratch within a week. She submitted it early and defended it with precision and passion. Her professors clapped. One whispered, "You don't just understand law, Amara. You understand people." She graduated at the top of her class. Hopeful, she applied for a scholarship to study governance abroad, one of the most prestigious grants in the country. She met all the requirements: academic excellence, public engagement, a powerful recommendation from Ngozi. But the rejection letter came curtly, incomplete political references, not recommended for final shortlist. Behind the lines, she saw the truth. She had no godfather, no senator or party chief to sign off her ambition. It felt like the system had spat her out again. So she built her own platform. Her YouTube channel started with one video, her reading a stripped-down version of her thesis. No studio, no makeup, just her voice, clear and focused, recorded on a borrowed phone. "Today," she said into the camera, "I want to talk about how government silence becomes generational poverty." She named it Tea Talks with Amara. In 2 weeks, the video hit 20,000 views. In a month, her subscriber count passed 100,000. People didn't just watch. They sent stories. Market women, widows, young men wrongfully arrested, victims of land seizures. Amara turned their stories into episodes. She explained policies in plain English. She broke down contracts and budget allocations with chalk and a board. Her tone wasn't academic. It was intimate, like a sister, a daughter, a friend. Soon she was dubbed the people's watchdog, but not everyone was clapping. One evening, while Amara was editing a new video on inflated school feeding contracts, her phone buzzed. A message from Chisholm. "Call me." When she did, Chisholm's voice shook. "These people you're talking about, they have money, Amara. They have men. They don't play clean." Chisholm had seen men in suits asking questions about Amara at the market. "Just be careful," she warned. "You're too bold, girl." Days later, 2 plainclothes officers arrived at Amara's apartment. "You're under investigation for tax evasion," one of them said flatly. Amara blinked. "I don't even own a business." They tried to drag her to the station. She called Ngozi, who arrived like a lioness in white. "You touch her without a warrant," Ngozi told them, "and I'll personally turn this into a constitutional lawsuit." The men backed off, for now, but more followed. Anonymous emails warned her to tread carefully. Comments on her videos turned aggressive. A local government aide tweeted, "Watchdogs get muzzled." Each threat rattled her. She had no security, no entourage, only truth and stubbornness. But Amara refused to stop. She released another video the next week. This time, her tone was firmer. "To those who think threats will silence me," she said into the camera, "remember, fire doesn't destroy steel, it forges it." Her words echoed across the country. More whistleblowers wrote in. NGOs reached out. Journalists offered interviews. But late at night, when the camera was off and the applause faded, 2 months before the general elections, Amara uploaded a video that changed everything. No dramatic lighting, no fanfare, just her seated in a plain white blouse, backdropped by the Lagos skyline at dusk. "I'm not just going to talk about change anymore," she began. "I'm going to fight for it." She inhaled. "I am officially running for the Lagos State House of Assembly, Surulere Constituency 2, as an independent candidate." The internet lit up. Her followers erupted in support. But in the streets of Surulere, the laughter returned. "Shay, it's T. She'll serve at the parliament too. Make she go marry a beg." Even at home, her mother's hands trembled as she clutched the worn wrapper around her chest. "Amara, listen to me. These people, these politicians, they kill for less. They bury people alive for seats. You're not from a political family. You're not protected." Amara only nodded. She understood the fear. She had lived with it too, but she had crossed a line inside herself long ago. There was no going back. Her father didn't speak to her at all. Still, she moved forward. She printed posters using donations sent in by market women who remembered how she exposed the water levy scam. She designed her campaign with the help of university students who had once taken her free civic classes online. She printed flyers in both English and Yoruba. Her manifesto was titled simply, "Water, Roads, Dignity." No convoy, no bodyguard, just Amara in her flat shoes, walking through muddy alleys, shaking hands, listening to complaints. And there was Chief Raymond Udo, her opponent, billionaire, real estate magnate, longtime friend to governors. His rallies offered rice bags, 2,000 naira notes stuffed in wrappers, branded cooking oil. Posters with his face were everywhere. Even local pastors called him God's chosen. When Amara walked into some compounds, people turned their eyes away. "Sorry, we can't help you. We already collected Chief's rice." But the tide began to shift. At every town hall she hosted, crowds grew. Not because she promised heaven, but because she listened, because she spoke like them. She didn't talk about legislation. She talked about the borehole that was dug halfway and abandoned. She talked about schools where teachers hadn't been paid. Okada riders volunteered to print more flyers. A women's co-op raised funds to hire sound equipment for her next speech. Some people gave 200 naira, 500 naira. One student sold his phone to donate 5,000 naira. The final televised debate arrived. A national broadcaster hosted it, with every candidate on stage. Chief Udo wore his signature agbada and gold wristwatch. Amara arrived in a navy blue suit, donated by one of Ngozi's old friends. Udo sneered before cameras rolled. "You're just a girl with internet mouth," he said under his breath. But when the moderator asked about infrastructure plans, Amara struck. "I'd like to ask Chief Udo a question," she said calmly. "Where is the 48 million naira budgeted for the Surulere water revamp project? 3 years, 3 boreholes, 2 are dry." Udo coughed. "The contractors were your cousins," she cut in, "and your signature is on the release vouchers." The studio went silent. Online, the clip went viral before the debate even ended. Amara shut it down, trended across Twitter. Election day arrived, thick with tension. Rumours of rigging floated. Some polling units delayed opening. Ballot papers disappeared in certain wards. Turnout was low. Fear hung like smoke. But Amara showed up, early. She stood at her polling unit in jeans and a hoodie, holding her ID. "You still came?" someone whispered. "I told you," she replied. "I'm not going anywhere." By nightfall, the results began to pour in. It was tight. very tight. But the final numbers were clear. Amara Johnson, 11,212 votes. Chief Raymond Udo, 10,974 votes. She had won by just 238 votes. The announcement shook the city. Independent tea seller defeats billionaire. New face of grassroots politics emerges from Lagos. From bus park to parliament. Outside her campaign office, a crowd gathered. Chants erupted. "Madam Parliament! Madam Parliament!" But Amara stood quietly, watching from a small window. She didn't celebrate immediately. She simply opened her old journal, turned to the first page, and under the words she'd written years ago, "I want to become a lawmaker," she added, "and now I am." At 27, Amara Johnson walked through the marble-floored entrance of the Lagos State House of Assembly, dressed in a neatly tailored suit, her hair pulled back, her steps steady. Behind her, aides carried folders and boxes, but she needed no one to hold her hand. Journalists crowded near the entrance. "Madam Parliament! Madam Parliament! From tea seller to lawmaker, how did you do it?" She paused, turned gently to face the cameras, and said with calm conviction, "The system failed my mother, failed my friends, but it won't fail my daughters. Not if I can help it." The crowd roared. Inside, the atmosphere shifted. The older lawmakers, some of whom had scoffed at her candidacy, watched in polite silence. Others whispered, others smirked, but none could deny her legitimacy. She had something they had never earned, the people's trust. Her first proposal came just 3 weeks into her term, the Women's Market Protection and Compensation Bill. It called for a government-backed insurance scheme for market women across the state, covering fire, flood, theft, and loss of income during civic disturbances. She presented the bill not with flowery words, but with a firm voice and real data. She told the story of her mother, of the fire that destroyed everything, and the silence that followed. The chamber listened. The bill passed with overwhelming support. News stations flashed the headline, "First-time lawmaker scores victory for market women." Next came her second bill, Public Budget Access Reform. It mandated all 20 local government areas to publish quarterly budget breakdown, accessible online and at town halls, in both English and local languages. No more coded spending, no more misplaced files. When lawmakers tried to stall it, she went live on her channel. "Why is it dangerous for the people to know how their money is spent? If that's dangerous, then I'm proud to be dangerous." Public pressure mounted. The assembly caved. The bill passed. Her nickname returned, but now with reverence. Tea girl with a spine, people's watchdog in Parliament. One morning, walking through the corridor toward a committee hearing, Amara spotted a man mopping the marble floor near the legislative gallery. He looked up. Their eyes met. It was him, one of the jeering boys from the old bus park, the one who had knocked over her tray and laughed when her bread landed in the mud. Now older, heavier, his face lined with wear, he looked down quickly, avoiding her gaze. She paused, walked over, and quietly handed him a cup of tea from the small thermos she still carried. He froze. "No need to run," she said gently. "I'm not here for revenge. We've both come far." He accepted the cup with trembling hands, unable to speak. She smiled, then turned and continued down the corridor. Outside the assembly, children now pointed at her posters and told their mothers, "I want to be like her." Inside the assembly, she studied budgets, reviewed laws, and kept her voice sharp and her heart soft. And at night, she still wrote in her journal, "I'm not here because I was special. I'm here because I refused to sit down." The tea girl had entered the parliament, but she never left the people. The sun had long dipped beneath the cluttered rooftops of Ajagunle, casting long shadows across the uneven pavement. Amara's convoy was nowhere in sight. She had come alone, dressed in a simple blouse and flats, without the layers of protocol that now defined her days. She walked slowly down the narrow path behind the old bus park, the familiar scent of engine grease, dust, and roasted corn stirring something deep in her chest. The tiny tea stall still stood, its wood panels even more weathered, the rusted kettle hanging by a crooked nail. Time had passed, but some things hadn't changed. She stood there silently, her eyes taking in the spot where she once crouched at dawn, pouring tea with trembling fingers. Every insult, every jeer from passing conductors, every silent prayer whispered into the steam of her flask, returned like echoes in the wind. Footsteps tapped softly behind her. A girl, no more than 11, walked past, balancing a small tray of bread on her head. She paused, stared at Amara, unsure whether to smile or move along. Their eyes met. The girl's gaze flickered to the parliament pin on Amara's chest. "You sell bread?" Amara asked gently. The girl nodded. Amara knelt down, pulled her leather briefcase onto her lap, and unzipped it. From inside, she took out a slim, dog-eared copy, Women and Governance in Africa. She held it out. "This helped me more than tea ever did," she said, pressing the book into the girl's small hands. "Keep reading." The girl smiled, uncertain but curious. Amara stood up and watched as she walked away, the tray of bread wobbling slightly, the book clutched tight beneath her elbow. Then she turned back toward the streetlight, eyes glistening, not from sadness, but from the weight of full-circle moments. The wind picked up, carrying dust and memory alike. A quiet voiceover played as the screen faded to black. They laughed at the tea girl, but history will remember the woman who made the system boil. Hi besties, thank you so much for watching to the end. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe.